Hello, this is Stephen Dominguez, the S in the BS Podcast Network. Please enjoy this fine podcast.
Admiring your handiwork?
Touring the riot scene. Gravely assessing the devastation. Upstanding mayor stuff.
You're not the mayor.
Things change.
What do you want?
The direct approach. I admire that in a man with a mask. You don't really think you'll win, do you?
Things change.
Meow.
What are you? I'm Batman.
Who are you?
My name is Bond.
Bond.
I'm Batman.
Name's Bond. James Bond.
I'm Batman.
Bond. James Bond.
I'm Batman. I'm Batman.
This is the Batman vs. James Bond show. The show covering everything related to Batman and James Bond movies. And now, here's your host, Brian Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to an all-new episode of the Batman vs. James Bond show. The name's Thomas, Brian Thomas, and I am your host. And this is the show where we discuss everything related to Batman and James Bond movies. It's great to be back. Oh, yeah. I hope everybody had a fantastic week. Mine was excellent. It was a very crazy week because if I haven't said this, this is the time of the year where Comic Cons are in full swing. Now, last year at this time, I was talking more about Comic Cons on the show, and I'm not going to really mention it aside from the fact that I did dress up as one of my favorite characters. No, not the one that I usually do. I did not dress up as Batman. I actually dressed up as James Bond. Which James Bond, you ask? Well, whichever one wore the white tux, and you could say Roger Moore, Sean Connery. No, Pierce never did. Daniel Craig. So, what was surprising is that a lot of people did recognize me as James Bond. I didn't even have to do anything. I carried around the martini glass, and even when I didn't, I was carrying my fake Walther, and people were like, "It's James Bond." And then you strike the James Bond pose, and it worked out pretty well. And then there was a few people that are like, "Are you Sterling Archer?" I'm like, "Sure, that works. Okay, why not? Sure." And then I'm like, "Danger Zone." So, overall though, great week, but there's a lot of things to get to, and there's a certain person that is making his big return to Batman vs. Bond. That's right, the host of That's So 90s podcast, Bobby Semelsberger. Welcome back to the show. Great to talk to you again, sir.
Thank you, Brian. I'm happy to be back, and man, am I pumped to talk everything Batman, everything Bond. Getting a little sweaty just thinking about it.
Well, it's great to have you, and I have to say that I'm referring to you online as the 90s expert. You are my 90s expert go-to, okay? I just want to make that clear, all right?
A lot of pressure, all right? But I can do it.
And when I heard this review, when I saw this review was coming up on my calendar, I'm like, who better than the man who I talked to about Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, the two worst of the Batman films? Let's redeem ourselves with a better Batman film. Or maybe what could be classified as maybe one of the best. That we'll talk about that. You might
definitely
be the deciding factor.
Interesting.
Yes, definitely. So, Bobby will be sitting in with me for the whole show, and we have a lot to talk about, like I said. But before we jump into things, just a reminder, BatmanVSBond.com. That's right, you know the name. It doesn't have a number, but go there for all the latest shows and more content. And you can also find the show on the BS Podcast Network. That's bspodcastnetwork.com. Find my show and a whole bunch of our other great shows on there. Now, I'm going to skip news. I'm going to do this kind of out of order here. I'm going to do this kind of like a memento in a way. I'm going to just say that let's talk about Batman Returns. Let me just give you, it's the 25th anniversary of Batman Returns, released on June 19th, 1992. I would say I was in maybe first or second grade, give or take, when this movie came out. I know a lot of the listening audience is right around that same age. Bobby, give or take, were you in like elementary school or preschool?
Well, I'm definitely going to date myself.
Oh, God.
I was not
I
born
forgot you're
yet.
young.
I was not born yet.
You little, never mind. That's okay. But you remember probably when the first time you watched this, I would imagine.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah, definitely.
And I know I didn't see this in theaters, and if my parents took me to theaters, I can only imagine what the other parents were thinking about that. The other kids were probably like, "Hey, he's one of the cool kids." But no, I had to wait till back in the day, kids. As we always say, there was something called VHS, and when the VHS came out at Blockbuster, or you were able to buy it at your local Walmart or wherever, then you were the talk of the town. So, what I'd like to do is give a quick synopsis, and then we're going to go right into it. So, the synopsis for Batman Returns, that's right. Sorry, there's so many Batman movies this week, I apologize. Directed by Tim Burton, the monstrous penguin with Danny DeVito, who lives in the sewers beneath Gotham, joins up with wicked, shock-headed businessman Max Schreck, Christopher Walken, to topple the Batman Michael Keaton once and for all. But when Schreck's timid assistant Selina Kyle, Michelle Pfeiffer, finds out that Schreck tries to kill her, she is transformed into the sexy Catwoman. She teams up with the Penguin and Schreck to destroy Batman, but sparks fly unexpectedly, when she confronts the Caped Crusader, starring Michael Keaton as Batman Bruce Wayne, Danny DeVito as the Penguin Oswald Cobblepot, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman Selina Kyle, Christopher Walken as Max Schreck, and Michael Gough as Alfred Pennyworth. Let me hold off on the fun facts right now. Let me know what you think about Batman Returns. What's the first thing you think of when you think of Batman Returns?
First thing I think of is black ooze coming out of Danny DeVito's crepid mouth.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I have a fun fact for that. Okay.
Do you want to go into the fun fact, or should I just...
No, go ahead. I'll come back to it. It's okay.
Okay. Because my first memories of Batman Returns is that, and we talked about this last time I was on, is that I was a huge fan of Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, definitely the Schumaker stuff, because growing up, of course, I'm younger. So I grew up with these movies, on VHS. I'd watch Batman Forever over and over, Batman and Robin. I didn't even think I knew that the Tim Burton movies existed until I was maybe 7, 8, or 9.
Yeah.
Because those movies were frightening. So there's probably a reason my parents were trying to keep those away from me, right? Because they are, now we kind of look back and we're like, oh, those Tim Burton movies are cheesy. Because they are, especially 1989 is pretty cheesy. It's compared to The Dark Knight.
Oh, yeah.
But at the time, and even, in the late 90s, early 2000s, those movies were still pretty dark, right?
Oh, yeah.
Pre-Batman Begins, it was that's the darkest thing you've seen Batman do, that whole world. Very steamy, but so Batman Returns, though, like I said, the first thing that freaked the crap out of me as a kid was Danny DeVito. And they go over the top trying to make him the most frightening looking thing you've ever seen, especially for a kid like me, because I don't like horror movies.
Right.
I'm afraid of just the lightest of little horror movies. So something like Danny DeVito, I'm not even ashamed to say, still sometimes when it's completely dark in this apartment and I'm about to go to sleep, if that image of Danny DeVito gnawing down on a fish, or breaking or eating that dude's nose where the blood squirts out.
Yeah.
Those images are scary. Those are creepy, and he's such a disgusting creature. And I know that adds to exactly what Tim Burton was trying to do.
Yeah.
And Danny DeVito obviously is great in that role. I'm just saying, this movie for certain kids like me growing up is haunting. It is haunting. So anyway, that's my initial memories of Batman Returns. Obviously, I've watched it many times since then.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God, it's the hideous Penguin Man. And I never was able to figure out, even last night when I watched it, I was like, is he really eating a fish? Because Danny DeVito stayed in character, they said, throughout the whole time. So I'm thinking, maybe he would. It's Danny DeVito, the guy. I mean, he's great at what he does, and he put himself into this role, but that's, yeah. And it could be worse. My nose could be gushing blood. It's and that's not the part that freaks me out. Now, every time I think of Catwoman and I think of Batman Returns, I think of when Selina Kyle, and we're putting a big spoiler alert because the movie's been out for 25 years. So pause this episode if you haven't watched it and then come back. But when Max Schreck pushes her out of the window, out of the building, and she falls, that's not the problem. It's when the cats are chewing on her fingers. It's and her eyes that Michelle Pfeiffer is actually able to make roll, and that's not CGI. This is before.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they were just starting with CGI, but she was able to do that, and I can't watch that. It freaks me out to this day. It really does.
That scene freaks you out. So it's Catwoman that freaks you out.
That part really does. Yes, the black oozing out does not freak me out. I think it's just more humor. I think I'm looking beyond that because I just think that his look in there. Just as he's trying to pull the umbrella, I think it's priceless. I really do. The very beginning of this movie, how it starts off. First of all, you have somebody that I know you're familiar with, and I forget the name of the actor who played Pee Wee Herman. Come on, what's the guy's name?
Yeah, put me on the spot.
Yeah,
I was going to say Paul Reiser. I know it's not Paul Reiser.
No,
it's Paul something, right?
Yeah. But you know who I'm talking about. Anyway, so, and I never watched Pee Wee Herman growing up, but now that I know who Pee Wee Herman is, I'm like, oh, it's Pee Wee Herman. He's the father of the Penguin. And that's how I always recognize him as. But you have that, and then it's just a very creepy intro. Everything from the birth of the Penguin, how he takes the cat and he just pulls it in there and does whatever he does to it. I'd assume that he's eating the cat. I would assume. And then even his parents are very dark because they have this child that is obviously abnormal. It's Christmas time at that time and they throw into the sewer. It's like, wow, okay, we're going to skip just a regular, pre-title sequence or just the intro of, the title sequence, and we're going right to something than that. Okay, this is a Burton Batman. This is a Burton film, not just a Burton Batman film. I mean, this is the guy who did Edward Scissorhands, which I still find kind of creepy at this, still to this day. Beetlejuice was, it's an acquired taste. I like Beetlejuice. I think it's maybe because I like Michael Keaton. I like the dark humor in there. But it just going into that, it's just, you're in for a different ride, it feels like. And just the vision of Gotham City, you can tell it's a different type of set. It's not so much as kind of closed in. It looks a little bit more spread out, if that makes any sense. It's a little brighter, to as bright as a Tim Burton Batman movie can be, anyway.
Slightly brighter gray than the grayness of the first one.
Right. We obviously don't have the Joker or Carl Grissom or Jack Palance returning, because we know what happened to them in the previous film. But what's so interesting about this is that it's not a sequel per se. I mean, I've always thought of this as a sequel, but like I said, Burton did not want this to be a sequel. He wanted this to be his own thing. The writer of this, Sam Hamm, he actually wrote something called Batman 2. And what his intentions were with that is that it would be more along the lines of Batman 89, whereas the Penguin would be more of a gangster. He'd be running around with like a AK-47 or Tommy gun, what have you. And Selena Kyle wouldn't be quite exactly how we pictured her in there. It's some really interesting things to this. And of course, Burton said, I want full control of this film. And after watching this, and if you've watched enough Burton films, you know exactly what he's capable of, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So, as overall though, I think I always like revisiting this. It's now becoming more of a Christmas movie for me. So watching this at this time of the year, I'm like, oh, Christmas in June. Okay, it works. But, other thoughts about Batman Returns. What do you think?
Well, so for me, I think I really wish I was one of the people that was like, Batman Returns is the greatest superhero movie or one of the best superhero movies or whatever, because there are a lot of people out there. I saw a lot of posts on Twitter because it is the 25th anniversary as we record right now. Yep. So on Twitter, I saw a bunch of people saying, it's the best Batman. It's so awesome. Definitely stands above whatever. For me, I'm like, I wish I was the cool person that was like, Batman Returns is the best Batman, better than Christopher Nolan or whatever. Yeah. But for me, it's like, I appreciate this movie more than I really actually like it. Like, I think the movie is fine. I don't think it's like great because I do think it's so weird, but I appreciate it for what Tim Burton basically got away with, which is like, the first movie, 1989 Batman, Tim Burton basically played it by the books, right? It was like he made a pretty awesome blockbuster movie for the time that made a bajillion dollars and sold all the lunch boxes and all the action figures. It was unprecedented for the time. And then with the sequel, they're probably much just like, hey, you made us so much money, Tim. If you come back for the sequel, you can do whatever you want, have as much creative freedom. And it's kind of like the long con in a way, because Tim Burton was like, great. Now I get to make the Batman movie I really wanted to make, which is not really a superhero movie in the way that we know superhero movies. Like, I think this movie is, for being a blockbuster summertime, especially a sequel to one of the most successful movies of all time at that point, like, this is, like kind of what you're saying, a completely different ride, completely out of left field.
Yeah.
Like, with the expectations. That's why I kind of wish I was the right age when these movies came out, because I want to know when people saw this movie so pumped. They were amped after the first one.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's probably a lot of people that came out of this movie that were kind of, I mean, some of them loved it. Probably some people were like, what did I just watch? Like, what was that? That was not what I was anticipating. And I think this movie has a lot of great sequences to it, and there's a lot of great art decoration, and there's so many great things about it. I just think overall, it's really not my cup of tea. At least the last time I watched it. I haven't watched it in a little bit, but maybe if I watch it now, I'd have a little bit more of a appreciation from like an artistic standpoint.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, hey, right on for Tim Burton for just being like, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to make the Penguin, like, I'm going to make you care about the villains more than Batman, right? Because Batman feels like a side character in his own movie. This is very much about Catwoman, very much about Penguin. And I mean, now that we have so many Batman movies, it is nice to kind of have all these different flavors. Like, you have the Christopher Nolan, you have the Schumachers, you have whatever Ben Affleck's doing, you have Lego Batman, you know, and then here you have the dark and twisted in a different way than maybe Heath Ledger's Joker's Dark and Twisted. Like, this is dark and twisted in a completely strange, over the top, cartoony yet frightening. It's like a frightening cartoon. It's like a Nightmare Before Christmas, like Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot that I like that we can get into. Yeah. But yeah, it is a strange movie. It is a strange movie, especially for a blockbuster, and you gotta appreciate it for that.
Yeah. And what's so funny about that, I touched on a few things that you said, is that we would consider it a blockbuster, but when you really watch this movie, or you go back and watch this movie, it really isn't. I mean, there really isn't like any big building explosions. There's nothing like, I mean, there are car chases in here. There are some action sequences in here, but this is more, as you said, kind of like art house. Could this be considered more of an art house film in a way?
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually, you know, what's funny is like, I feel like some of the things, like some of the bigger, like at the end, for example, you have Batman crash into the Penguin Duckmobile, right? Yes. And then Batman gets out, and the Penguin like attacks him. That scene right there just feels forced. Like, it feels like that's an action. Oh, and it's the action moment. It's when Batman fights the Penguin, and it's like, I just remember always being like, this is really like, it feels so out of place. Like, it's just like these characters wouldn't, like, obviously Penguin can't hold his own against Batman, but it kind of felt like, well, even Tim Burton was like, we have to have some sort of action thing in there, so let's put this little action thing in there. You know, but even all the action moments aren't even like these crazy amazing action moments. Like, even Batman versus Catwoman, like their quote unquote fight, is more of this weird, like, hypersexualized. It's
kind of a waltzer, just in a way.
Yeah, it's like a waltz, and there's always cool moments. Like, there are, like, I like when Penguin makes his umbrella turn into a helicopter and he flies away, and then when Batman has, some people think this is stupid, but when he has like the Game Boy Batarang that he throws, right?
It's pretty much, it's like a drone. It really is. They were thinking ahead.
It's a drone, but even that stuff are like such Tim Burton-esque, like especially 80s, 90s Tim Burton-esque, like little features. Like, I feel like it feels like Tim Burton was probably having the time of his life. Oh yeah. You know, he's probably like, oh, what about a Batarang that does this? And oh, what about some penguins that got little rocket launchers on their backs? And it's like, Tim, why? He's like, because we have the money to do it. Like, he finally has the money and the power at this point to do whatever he wanted. And so for me, I'm just like, right on, Tim Burton, go crazy. Yeah. But I feel like even those, like, I'd actually see, like, if it wasn't meant to be this blockbuster movie, I wonder if Tim Burton would have even gone weirder with it, and it would have even had less, like, action moments and less, like, maybe even plot, or maybe even Batman wouldn't even be in the movie. Like, who knows? Like, if he was like Batman Returns, but it stars the Penguin. You know, because essentially this movie has Danny DeVito maybe in it more than Michael Keaton.
Yeah, I was going to say, essentially it's a Penguin Catwoman origin story featuring Batman Bruce Wayne. I mean, Michael Keaton is the top build, and he made sure he held out for more money with this, which rightfully he should have. Burton came back with this, and he wasn't even sure, but like I said, he wanted to have his way on this, but this is not a blockbuster action film. It's more of a drama thriller, if anything. with some action scenes in it. You do have Batman on a hang glider. You have him, fighting some thugs. The opening to this, when we actually see Batman, which is probably not like until 15 minutes in, he goes right into Gotham City. Be one of the better sequences of the movie, I think. Mm-hmm. And he's shooting beanbags at the skull guys on the dirt bikes, and he lights somebody on fire. And yes, Batman kills. He killed a couple times in this movie.
Yeah.
That's okay. Little things like that. No, I mean, they're great sequences, and they're filmed. I mean, for a movie that was filmed in 1992, it holds up really well, considering the cinematography. But it comes down to the story of Batman. This is my problem with Batman Returns. It's just like Batman was pushed aside because I guess Burton thought that Catwoman and Penguin were more interesting, I think, in a way.
Yeah, he relates with those type of characters.
Yeah, and I mean, he brought out the best in both of them. I mean, if, like you said, if Batman wasn't in there, then, he might have made it only a cameo if Burton probably had his way. Not saying that Burton doesn't like Batman, because everything that Michael Keaton did when he was on screen was perfect. He ripped up the scenes that were written with him. He ripped up the dialogue, not ripped up, but he said, "Oh, that's great dialogue. I'm not going to say that though when I'm in the Batsuit. Less is more." And just the updated Batsuit in there, which I think is one of the better Batsuits. I think it's up there with the Batman Begins and the Ben Affleck Batman suit, the one from Batman v Superman. So I'll give it to them.
Yeah, I think it looks better. You look at it's funny, the Batman 89 one, isn't weird how the symbol has the little legs on it?
Yeah, well, there was some kind of legal dispute with that where they couldn't use that. So that was what was so great about that they could get more of this kind of symbol going on. That's a symbol on my t-shirt there. So they had all that. Other things though, I would say that it was nice to see, Michael Keaton back as Batman. Like I said, everything that he did in there, his facial expressions, you got to do the whole body turn. He can't turn his head, obviously. That's another thing in here. But I think Michael Keaton knocked it out of the park. I really do. He looks great. Like looks great. Like you were saying, like in the Batsuit, I think that's the best one. Yeah. I think it has that like Art Deco feel to it. Yeah. And he looks amazing. Like him just standing, like when he first comes out of the Batmobile, like the first time we see him full in costume. Yeah. Oh, and he does that thing where he shoots the grappling hook at the clown that has Selena Kyle, misses him, and then just rips out the wall behind him. Right.
So kick ass. Yes. And then he just kind of stands there with the shadows. Yeah, Michael Keaton, like you say, nailed it. He nailed it. Yeah. And you know what? There's no reason for him to come back for a third one, because what else was he going to do? I feel like he kind of just like peaked. Now even he was like, I'm good. Second, I'm done 2. I'm out of here.
Yeah. I've done 2. I think I'm good. Yeah, I'll do Birdman eventually, and then be Spider-Man's villain. Yeah. I would say, that you could tell the dialogue. There might have been dialogue there, but he's like, F it, I'm not going to do it. There's no dialogue needed. I'm a Batman. Because I'm Batman, I can do that. I can I don't have to like shoot somebody with a grappling hook. I can just throw it in the wall and say, "Oh, you missed," and then just pull it. Perfect. And how he disappeared. He would just walk away when he's talking to the commissioner and the mayor, and he just disappear there. How he suits up, and the bat signal. Oh, that bat signal. When Commissioner Gordon says at the very beginning, when the circus gang goes into Gotham City, when they're lighting the tree, he's like, "What are you waiting for? The signal." Michael Keaton's just got his hand on his fist, and he's just kind of like in the dark. Who knows where Alfred is? He probably dismissed him for the night. Alfred, I'm going to just kind of think about Vicky Vale and what could have been. And all of a sudden, the signal turns on in his room, and he stands up. That is still one of my favorite scenes of any Batman movie. It truly is. Yeah. Mixed with the Danny Elfman score. Another plus is that we got Danny Elfman back, who almost didn't come back for this because he was upset that, because there was music such as, there was a lot more Prince and more hit music that was used in the beginning one, and he wanted it more kind of, more of a music score. And I think he did. It actually ended up being one of the better scores that he did. I'm in between if I like this better than the Batman 89 score. I'm not sure, because you have some new themes. You still have the returning Batman theme, which I can listen on repeat over and over again, which I pretty much have all day. Another good thing about this is Christopher Walken. I think that he is the main villain of this film. And, I think that I mean, Christopher Walken, I've seen him in other movies before. He's been a Bond villain even, but this is him unplugged. He's a, well, yeah, I said this about Ares with Wonder Woman. Yeah, Christopher Walken's Max Schreck is a dick also, he really is.
Yeah. Pure evil.
He is pure evil. I mean, he pushes his secretary out of a window and he tricks, a guy who's just trying to reclaim his birth, trying to discover his identity, and tricks him and uses him to get power of a mayor so he can build a power plant. I mean, that's twisted. Yeah. And he kills his own partner too. When they show, the hand, there's something creepy. The hand, in the sewer when, Max Schreck meets the penguin for the first time. That's a dark scene, aside from the little penguins that are running around, if you remember that.
Yeah. And he's also like stuck in a little bird cage.
Yeah.
And everything. Yeah. For me, I don't know. I don't really like Christopher Walken in this movie, to tell you the truth, because I feel like he's just, I don't know. It's like you already have these two villains. Now we have a third villain. Yeah. I think it just adds to the problem that I personally have with the movie, whereas I'm like, and as you start talking about Michael Keaton, all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, he is great in this movie. Like, Batman is awesome in Batman Returns.
Yeah.
But like we were saying, you don't get enough Batman. If that's right. Your problem with it. Like, if you like the villains, then this is your movie. I think personally, I don't really connect with Penguin. And I don't connect with, obviously I don't connect with the evil man, Christopher Walken. So it's like Batman, I think if Batman was more front and center, but here we have three villains that are at the forefront. Mm-hmm. Batman is now playing second fiddle to also Christopher Walken. And I think for me, at least, Christopher Walken, because I believe I read that was originally supposed to be Harvey Dent.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes, they were supposed to have Billy D. Williams back, but they ended up replacing him with that instead. So,
and maybe because then there could be like, obviously there'd be a cliffhanger that lead to Two-Face and blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. Maybe that I would like that more. But for me, I think Christopher Walken was always, I guess you're supposed to hate him because, like we said, he's just pure evil.
Yeah.
But I was just like, screw this guy. He's not even as interesting as Penguin or Catwoman. At least they're like super villains. At least they're doing crazy weird stuff. He's just a guy in a suit that's just a dick. Like, he's just a prick,
Yeah, I think this goes into the overcrowding of villains, which I think, especially nowadays with superhero films, we tend to see. It's, one wasn't enough, so let's have two, and actually you end up having three the more you look at it. And I think that just if they would have stuck with just the Penguin, or just if they had their way, just Catwoman, I think that could have been they could have gone more with the dark love story about the duality and so forth of these two characters in there. And when Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Keaton are on screen together, whether it's in costume, which I think is the best. All right, fine. I'll say the quote. Mistletoe can be deadly if you eat it, but
even deadlier. I don't remember the rest.
But a kiss can be deadlier if you mean it.
That's right.
Right.
I knew it was deadly.
Close enough. That's okay. It's probably better I said it by myself anyway.
You keep putting me on the spot today. And
I'm
you're making
sorry,
me look like an idiot.
No, I would never do that. No, never. I would say that, when you see the scenes of just Selena Kyle and Bruce Wayne, that they feel out of place, but in a good way. They know that they are just these characters that are in a world where they don't fit in. And they play that off so well. They really do. And they're trying to play like they're normal, but they're not. There's so much going on with these characters. And that's what Burton was able to do with these, is the character study. We did get that backstory, at least, of Michael Keaton's Batman and Batman 89. And if you didn't see Batman 89, then it probably won't make as much sense of why this guy's dressing up as a bat. It's not that it's necessary, though. We don't have to understand. It's just the fact that this is Batman and that he's out there to fight crime. And, that's how it is. Selena Kyle's story, though, of just the kind of flimsy I actually could say flimsy would be the word. I don't know, kind of ditzy, maybe, in a way, secretary, and just very soft-spoken, just kind of goes with it. Boss pushes her around. But, when she becomes Catwoman, her losing her mind in that scene, when she comes back after she's kind of, being bitten by the cats and after falling from the building, that's a very dark scene. I remember watching that as a little kid. I'm like, whoa, this is a little much, maybe for me. I don't know. She's stuffing, her toy animals down the garbage disposal. She's, just destroying pictures all over the place, and just, she's bleeding, when she's sewing up her costume, and it's just like, this is kind of freaky. Like you said, I think this is the most horror Batman movie we've ever had also.
Yeah, I love Michelle Pfeiffer, like, as Catwoman. I think maybe because that's, like, maybe the first Catwoman I ever experienced. Come on, that leather suit, that thing is iconic.
Bondage.
You know? Yeah. And I don't know why, but I can't even name many movies that Michelle Pfeiffer's in, but, like, for some reason I have a crush on Michelle Pfeiffer. I don't know why. Maybe it's from this movie. Yeah, I mean, I can only name, like, a handful, but, like, it's weird, but I really like in this, I really like her. And I really like, as we're talking, I'm like, I realize I love Michael Keaton as Batman. I love Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. Like, everything with those two, which is, like, you know, half of the movie, pretty much. I love all that stuff. Yeah. I think for me, it's all the Penguin as the mayor and the Christopher Walken pulling the strings. Don't care for that as much. But those two guys, I don't know why, but I find his individual story, her individual story, and then them together and what they have to deal with and how they relate with each other because they're both, you know, kind of have these dual personalities and they don't know if they can be together and all this stuff. Yeah. I find that really interesting. I actually find that, like, I don't know why, but I think those characters really resonate with me more. Maybe because, obviously, in this movie, Penguin is a mutant. I'm a mutant freak and I hate everyone. You know, I just don't connect with that. I wish I did, but I don't connect with that. But I think there's something just about Batman and Catwoman and just that duality that I don't know. Obviously, I don't dress up at night and jump around as Monkey Man or something, but like I think just gravitate towards those stories even more. And like I said, all the scenes I think about with the movie, with them or individually or whatever, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a great scene. And that's a great scene. Like, you know what I love in this movie? It's another probably little Tim Burton flourish. Sure. I love seeing how Batman gets into Batcave fish tank, puts his little hand in, and he turns on the light in his little Wayne Mansion fish sized Wayne Mansion, which opens up like a sarcophagus.
Yeah, what is that? I couldn't figure that out. I still don't. It's like all pointy inside, and I'm like, how does he not get hurt? But okay.
I think that's the whole point is like, if for some reason, if the cleaning lady accidentally turned on the fish thing and then she was like, whoa, and then, you know, she doesn't want to go down the Batcave slide. No. But like, I don't know, like even that little thing, I've always remembered that, like, that was awesome. And I've always loved how to see, how does Batman get into the Batcave? And obviously Batman begins, he like plays 3 notes on the piano and then like the little bookcase opens and then Batman Forever, he has a slide from his office or whatever. But anyway, everything I think about with Batman in this movie or Catwoman, I'm just like, yeah, that was awesome. Like even you were saying the hang glider thing when he stands up on that ledge and shing shing, and he just has these wings that kind of come out of nowhere and disappear out of nowhere, or he kind of just drops it. I'm like, that's awesome too. Yeah. And even his it's not the Bat boat, but whatever he's on at the end.
No, it's the Bat boat. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it technically the Bat boat?
Yeah, it would be the Bat boat. Yeah.
Even that looks super cool. Oh, yeah. So, you know, anyway, as you can tell, listening, it's like I prefer my Batman movies with Batman. Right. But me too. Yeah, there's so much good things in this movie. Like there's so much good things. For me personally, I just think overall, it's too weird. It's just a little too just out of grasp for me. It's a little bit too like it has a lot of stuff I don't like. It has a lot of great stuff in it too.
Well, what if you have me thinking, and you do that a lot. Last time I was on your show, I was thinking a lot because I changed my opinion about 2 Batman movies. But I will say that what you can tell that the studio had influence because they wanted the Penguin in this. Whereas Burton and Sam Hamm, the writer, wanted to have Catwoman in this. So it's almost like if you have 2 movies combined in this. And what if, you had, just the Batman and Catwoman story as the sequel? Maybe that could have been better. Maybe you could have had more action in that. I have no idea. Maybe it could have gone in a different direction. But then again, if you just had Batman versus the Penguin and Max Schreck, that would have been a good separate story. There's a lot crammed into here. It's just over 2 hours, if I'm not mistaken. And you get a lot. You have, Batman just driving around in the Batmobile, just like he would in the TV show. Or I'm talking about like the animated TV series, that is. And that's what I picture that a lot more with Batman Returns than I do with the original Batman 89. I like you said about like the fish tank thing, instead of a bat pole like they used to do in the Adam West Batman, rest in peace, instead of going down that, it's a little bit more clever than that. I liked his little joke in there when he was, and this is like an inside joke apparently with the writer and the director, about the writer didn't like about how Vicky Vale was let into the Batcave in 1989. So he kind of threw in this line. He's like, oh yeah, so when Michael Keaton's talking to Alfred, he's like, "Oh yeah, well, who let Vicky Vale in the Batcave?" He's like, all of a sudden,
awesome.
I'm there, and then who's there? Oh, there she is. Hi, Vic. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
Other good things about this, I would say, when they did have the action sequences, I did like seeing the Batboat in there. That was really cool. The penguins with the missiles on the back. It's fun. I don't know. I guess I'm a sucker for the little penguins. I think they're so cute. I really do. and I'm skipping ahead here, but it's cute, but it's so sad at the end when they carry the penguin, when they carry Danny DeVito into the water, that little funeral sequence, it breaks my heart every time I watch that. It really does. And just like at the same time, you have Batman searching for Catwoman after she literally fried, Max Schreck, which is probably your favorite part of the whole movie. He's searching for her, and you want him to find her, and then all of a sudden you have the penguin just sneak up on him. It's just some really, really good things in there. I'm trying to think of things I dislike, and the biggest dislike of this, why it's not my favorite Batman movie, is because the main thing, you don't see enough Batman in here. I was doing some research about this, and I'm trying to think, okay, well, really, in how much of Batman screen time do we actually get in this? Now, in Batman 89, the movie was about 126 minutes, and we actually see 28 minutes of Batman on screen. I think that's a pretty good chunk. With Batman Returns, we only get 23 minutes, and the movie is also 126 minutes. I don't know about Bruce Wayne, but I can tell you, at least with Batman Begins, we had 24 minutes of Batman in there. With The Dark Knight, we had 27 minutes of Batman. In The Dark Knight Rises, we had probably over 20 minutes, give or take. Well, maybe more. But besides the point, though, in reality, when you're looking at a Batman movie, of course, when you have Batman on the title, who do you want to see but your hero? You want to see the main superhero in here. With the Burton Batmans, it's always been more about Batman, not so much about Bruce Wayne. With the Nolan trilogy, as I'm talking about that, I would say you see more of Bruce Wayne. It's about the Bruce Wayne character, not so much. It's about how he became Batman and his story arc with that. So, trying to think of other things that I wanted to add to this. Do you have other things you want to add?
Well, there's one fantastic sequence that we haven't talked about. I even like this when I was a kid, is when you have Penguin in the tiny little Batmobile controlling Batman's Batmobile, which is another one of those great things where I'm like, that's such a great scene. That is such a great scene. I even loved that, obviously, when I was a kid, too.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Kid, yeah. It's like you because that's exactly the same machine that you played on after the 1989 Batman in the arcade. Yeah. And Penguin has it. And it's exactly what we were talking about. It's creepy, yet ridiculous. And that's what Tim Burton does best, is everything's it's really dark and weird, but that's also so corny and so over the top. Not only just because if you just had Penguin go back to his trailer and he had maybe a little joystick, but the fact that he has a tiny little Batmobile inside his trailer and he's bouncing around like a big old baby, because that's what he looks like. Yeah. It's fantastic. And I just love that scene. I love seeing the Batmobile just boom, 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 just crush stuff. Yeah. And I love, obviously, the ending when he he's flicking the button and he can't get that button to work, and Mike Keaton's just like, it's funny. And then he starts freaking out. You never really see Batman panic. So you starting to see him panic. And then, boom, all of a sudden the Batmobile becomes really skinny.
The Bat Missile.
The little Batmobile missile. It's ridiculous, but it's great. Yeah. It's a little over the top, but, I love that sequence. Mm-hmm. I think that's such a good sequence.
It is, yeah. He's like, gentlemen, start your screaming. And it's such a big change from when we saw the Batmobile in Batman 89, because it was more for show, I think. Maybe it had, when it was going into Access Chemicals, it had some machine guns, and it dropped the mine in there. But this time, they really used the Batmobile a lot. I think that actually gets more presence than Bruce Wayne in this movie. I'm not complaining about that at all, because that is my favorite Batmobile. I mean, I love the Tumbler, but the Burton Batmobile is still one of my favorite. Probably my favorite, I think. And just the little quotes that Danny DeVito's saying to Batman. I played this city like a harp from hell. I'll take care of the wretched, pinheaded, whatever of Gotham. See, I should be quoting this a whole lot better. Helpless old lady at 12 o'clock high. And then Batman
has just enough time. Yes. Batman has just enough time to put that little disc in. Right, because that just shows how cool, calm, and collected Batman is most of the time. He's like, I know I'm crashing into people right now. I'm crashing into cars and causing a lot of property damage. But he's saying things that need to be recorded. So I'm just going to put this little disc in the CD player. Yeah. Also, it officially confirms the Batmobile has a CD player. Yeah. He's listened to his album in the first movie, in the second movie, and just like putting that disc in there. But yeah, man, like that, I think that, like you're saying with that Batmobile, I'm gonna think with the two movies that we get that Batmobile in, that's the best sequence with it.
Yeah.
That just tearing apart the streets, you get to see its power. Because if you, like the 1989 Batman, you look back at that really quick Batmobile chase, it is like the slowest thing.
There's nothing
that
to it. Yeah.
barely fits on the street. It has to use a grapple gun just to take a sharp left turn. Like, it's pretty ridiculous. But I think in Batman Returns, it's a little bit more badass.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You have, I mean, they applied some CGI when he, does his shields. I think just the details that they put in with that, I think it's awesome. Like you said about the Bat Missile, it's, I had that Bat Missile, that Batmobile that turned into the Bat Missile. I replayed that scene with my toys as often as I could. And now looking back, I'm like, what else could he really do with the Bat Missile besides fit into two really narrow buildings? What else would that serve?
If it was there, like it just fit perfectly? What if those buildings were just a little bit closer apart?
Right.
Like he knows the architecture of Gotham that well,
yeah.
And he's like, this is the skinniest alleyway in Gotham. I got this.
Yeah. Good stuff there. The Batboat, it was nice seeing that. I mean, the Bat Missile was pretty much the Bat Pod before it was even. Trying to think of other things. Him just suiting up, when he goes into the Bat Cave, and after he's done smooching with Selena Kyle, he goes down there because he's trying to go into Gotham City because the Penguin's trying to set him up. You actually see the inside of where all his bat suits are, and he has all his bat suits hanging. Why does he pick the fourth one? I have not a clue. I guess it's like the third or fourth one in. They're all exactly the same. Man. It's the lucky suit for the night. Obviously it was the unlucky one. He has all the different bat boots lined up, which coincidentally were actually Air Jordans from what I read. I think that was pretty cool. It's just the details with that. I mean, like I said, everything I have no complaints about what they did with Batman in there. It's just, I wish they could have used him more. I really do. Let's
talk about the talked about, but obviously never happened, Batman 3 with Tim Burton and Michael Keaton.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many projects like this. Even just recently, you had like Edgar Wright with Ant-Man, right? Like, what if there was an alternate reality where all these movies existed? Like, I would love to see Edgar Wright's Ant-Man the same way I'd like to be like, I wonder what Tim Burton's Batman Forever would have been. Obviously, it wouldn't have been called Batman Forever.
Right.
But like, I wonder what that third Batman movie would have looked like. Because even though, and we've talked about, like, I'm not a huge fan of the second movie, doesn't mean I'm not interested to see what he would have done with that. What would have been his trilogy? Like, I'm assuming that would have been his last one, and maybe that would have, because Batman Forever doesn't really connect to these other movies like much. I wonder if Billy D would have come back in the third one. I wonder if, they would have had Catwoman, because obviously we learned that she survived at the end of this movie. I wonder if she would have been back. Maybe they would have teamed up or something. I would love to see Batman and Catwoman actually like kind of team up in some regard.
Ooh.
I don't know, and try to have that relationship. Maybe Vicky Vale's back. Like, I would like to kind of see the connections between, in the same way that The Dark Knight Rises, when they completed that trilogy, they picked up strings from both the Batman Begins, and then even Dark Knight didn't even talk about certain things with Batman Begins. It was talked about again with, Dark Knight Rises. I wonder if Batman 3 would have been like, we're bringing back Vicky Vale. We're bringing back, things that we didn't even do in the second one. But, whatever. You get Catwoman, you get Vicky Vale, you get Harvey Dent, you get all these things. So, I don't know. What do you think we would have gotten out of a third Tim Burton Batman?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned this, because I found this article on Den of Geek, and actually it was about Batman 2, before we jump into 3. So Sam Hamm, the writer, he helped write Batman 89, and he was coming back to write this. It was called Batman 2, and he wrote several different treatments of the film. So it was going to be a sequel, picked up, over a year after the events. It'd be during Christmas. But like I said, Penguin and Catwoman were in it, but it was going to be more the vibe of the Joker, kind of that style. They talked about Kim Basinger's Vicky Vale was set to return and would settle down with Bruce Wayne after they became engaged. We'd also be introduced to a young homeless Robin who could have been played by Marlon Wayans.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Yeah. Let's see. It would be more closer to the comics than any of the